Elevators, clean grain elevator, tailings elevator, and then after this we'll cover the active rethresher on the larger machines also. You want to make sure both elevators are adjusted nice and tight. The adjustments are here on the side. What we have here is the chain is very loose, and what that's going to cause is the grain's going to get in between the chain and the sprocket and cause more damage. We want to make sure the chain's in good tight condition at the pins, sprocket's in good thick condition, no hooking to that sprocket. And then to adjust it, we want to loosen all 4 of these adjuster bolts, and we're going to loosen the threaded bolt up on top. We're going to lower that down, bring our jam down, and when we get done, we want that chain to be tight to the point where we can take and move that chain back and forth. If the chain's too tight, that could cause wear too quickly on that chain and the sprocket and cause damage prematurely. For those with a larger machine, a 680, 690, and 780, 790s, you're going to have a rethresher. It's going to be tied in and incorporated with the tailings elevator. What you're going to have with that rethresher is you're going to have your drive chain, so make sure your chain's in good working order. You've got a spring-loaded adjuster here to adjust that. Make sure all your sprockets are nice and thick and no sharp edges. And up inside, you're going to have a setting. You're going to have an upper setting on this lever for corn, and the lower setting is for small grain. And what that's doing inside is adjusting the plate that's up against those rasp bars inside on the rethresher. With the rethresher, that's giving you more capacity, and as it's coming through the machine, the grain can get dumped into the tailings. Tailings is going to bring it up, put it in the rethresher. It's going to have one more chance to get that last kernel off that cob or out of that hole, and then it's going to put it back in the cleaning system for one last chance before the grain goes to the tank instead of going out the rear of the machine. Last chance the combine is going to touch your grain coming into the tank is your loading auger. You want to make sure the loading auger is not sharp. If it is sharp, it's going to cut that grain, cause more damage. You want to make sure your tube does not have any internal wear to where it's going to scrape or damage that grain as well. Make sure your deflector shield's in place, and again, make sure that's not damaged and sharp to where the grain passing by it, once that grain gets up above here, is just going to sit and grind up against that sharp edge. Check your auger bottom drive. Make sure your drive cogs are not too worn. You can see this drive cog here has some wear items, wear spots. It's had a lot of revolutions. Going along with the drive cogs, you want to make sure the driver on the gearbox is not wore. Make sure all your points are in good thick condition. Make sure you can see where the auger has had good contact with the driver. This is going to be different depending on which model of combine you had. This particular example has 4 different drive cogs and 2 pins on the auger. The later machines, bigger machines, only may have 1 drive cog on the gearbox. Speaking of the gearbox, while you're up here on the front side, there's a dipstick. Check that oil, make sure it's in good level. No real reason to change the oil. That's kind of a lifetime oil. It's a slow-moving gearbox. Make sure your level's up. If you do need to add, we would suggest the heavy-duty reverser gearbox oil. It's very good at dissipating any kind of heat that gets in there. While you're up on the grain tank, check the condition of your troughs. Make sure they're not bent and hitting the augers. One thing you can do in the field is you've got different positions. You can adjust these troughs. The higher the trough is, the more flow is going to go out that auger system unloading. If you get into wetter conditions, you want to drop this down to the lower settings. Depending on which machine you have, you may have 2 or 3 settings. The lower the trough is, the less the grain's going to go through. The higher the moisture goes, the lower you want these to slow that flow down so you're not pulling so much on your unloading system. Underneath the augers, underneath the troughs, you want to check the auger condition, and again, make sure they're not sharp, wavy, or any damage to those augers. This is going to be the last chance this combine touches your grain. You want it in good working condition so you're not damaging that grain as it's headed out to the truck or auger cart.
So here is the unloading system drive. It's going to start with a series of belts. Comes across, it's going to engage. There is a shear pin up here by this hub that's going to shear in case of a high load situation. From there, it's going to be transferred into a drive chain across here to the lower unloading auger drive. On the earlier machines, there is a grease zerk up here that needs to be greased periodically. Refer to your operator's manual for that. The one thing you can check for wear is there's exposed gears here. When the gears become worn, that's driving hard, and at that point in time, you're probably going to have to look for service on the unloading auger system. So this is the vertical auger in the unloading auger system. As you can see here, as you get closer, this auger is worn, it's sharp, and also the diameter of the auger is smaller, so it's going to take more horsepower to lift that grain up into the horizontal auger. So it's not only going to take more power, but it's going to damage your grain as it goes up into the horizontal auger. So the transition between the vertical and the horizontal auger is a 90-degree gear case. That is right up at the turret of the unloading auger system. It is greasable, that you want to grease this periodically. Refer to your operator's manual. When you're servicing the unloading auger system, you also want to make sure that the gears are tight with this gearbox as it transitions into the horizontal auger.